Hey everybody, welcome to this session, Security Solved, how three security leaders bridge the security and developer divide with ASPM. I'm Ronen Slavin, CTO and co-founder of Psycode, and I'm delighted to be your host today. I'm excited to introduce an incredible lineup that we have for you today, as I'm joined by three security leaders who are at the top of their craft, driving impressive security outcomes in some of the world's leading organizations. I'm pleased to welcome Kara, Jose, and Mike. Welcome.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you.
So, Jose and Mike, I'm pleased to welcome you here today as Cycle customers. We have obviously huge respect for your security orgs, Threat Ventures, and Zebra. And we know you both have a wealth of valuable insights to share with our security community. Kara, it's a pleasure to welcome you as well. As a frequent keynote speaker on DevSecOps and a seasoned expert, we're excited to hear your thoughts on today's panel. And let's dive straight in. And really, the first question is maybe it's a bit controversial, but who do you think is the primary responsible for OPSEC? Is it security or developer or both? What are the takes on this?
Well, I could
So
definitely
it's
jump
a
in there and
time bomb. It's a grenade that you're throwing at us right now. So let's see who's gonna catch that one.
So looks like Michael is want to go first. So Michael, the stage is yours.
sure, absolutely. I was going to say security. I mean, it's definitely a collaboration, right, with your developers, but the ultimate responsibility does fall on those who've had, delegated security. The people who have, brought up the best practices and policies, brought in the tools that the developers are going to use. They're ultimately responsible for the results of those, the implementations of those, and you need the collaboration with the developers, but you gotta point to security and kind of blame them sometimes when things go wrong, the tools don't work, or the developer's workflow is impacted poorly. It is the responsibility of security to ensure that the tools and compliance we try to push down works well for them. So we do need that collaboration.
100%.
I, I can chime in on that. One of the most common things in enterprise world is the race metrics. Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. When it comes to security, we always talk about who's responsible, but we rarely talk about who's accountable, right? Security, GRC functions are the people who are accountable for the real outcome. Responsibility of fixing issues is always the developers themselves. So security is shared responsibility. So we don't want to point out one team and the other team, just keep the other team outside of the whole security paradigm. But we want to share the responsibilities properly. And the easiest way to do that is to use ratio metrics and have the accountable teams and responsible teams acting in harmony right next to each other. I guess that's one of the core promises of the DevSecOps.
Security being integrated throughout the whole process is critical. So 100% agree.
Very cool.
Cool.
I am. Yeah. So actually, this I think this leads us to the kind of the next question that actually focuses, on DevSecOps. So when we speak of DevSecOps and the DevSecOps model, and kind of using DevSecOps as the bridge between security and developers, like how do you view DevSecOps? Do you see it as the bridge? Like, what are your takes on that?
It's
I
definitely
can
a conversation starter for sure, right? Because people that just did historically DevOps, they're like, what is this DevSecOps? Is this just another buzzword, or is there an actual tangible goal here? And I think at least it gets the conversation started with the security teams and the developers so that we can bridge that gap and start talking about a shared responsibility on having continuous security improvements throughout the whole life cycle from the moment the project is thought about to the moment it's delivered. We're embedding ourselves. So I think it's good for bridging and getting that conversation started for sure.
It's easier to get lost when you try to assign a single owner to in a or like have define a shared responsibility model, because if everyone is responsible or if everyone is accountable, that means no one is accountable, no one is responsible, right? So the DevSecOps has a fuzzy definition, and if you Google it, you will end up seeing like five different variations or interpretation of what DevSecOps means. That's mainly because one size fits none. We cannot come up with a good way of doing stuff for SMEs, small and medium enterprises, large organizations, or megacorps. So every company at their scale, they have to pick the right approach. So the DevSecOps might vary, definition of or implementation of DevSecOps might vary, but the ratio metrics, the responsibility and accountability is almost always universal across all the spectrum of company sizes.
So you would say kind of the DevSecOps is kind of the enabler of the shared responsibility, but there's still like accountability, like we said in the previous answer. Very
It
cool.
is a motivator. It's a buzzword because we are, surfing the winds of the DevOps pattern that was created like 10, 15 years ago. So DevSecOps is like a new addition to the DevOps pattern, mainly fusing well, breaking up the silos. So one of the last silos that is still persistently across all the organizations is security. So you want to see security merge or fuse with the rest of the silos, the devs and the ops and everyone else. So, and also the security has more paperwork than any other IT function that you might see because of the compliance and regulations. That paperwork responsibility comes with the costs, but distracts people. But ultimately, DevSecOps is a way to motivate people to move towards the right direction.
Yeah. So you also mentioned the buzzwords. So I'm going to throw one out there, which is AI. So speaking of AI, we're starting to see kind of the harnessing of AI to look to help with code reviews. So how do you think it would change like the structure of teams and the focus areas? Do you think AI is going to do code reviews, help with security? Like what is kind of the way that you see it fitting, in this whole equation?
I don't think AI is necessarily going to change the structure of teams. I think it's going to be integrated well into hopefully a lot of the developers and DevSecOps workflows. Another buzzword out there, right? Shift left. We're seeing AI in developers' IDEs essentially, right? Are already scanning either for vulnerabilities or suggesting fixes, and that's inevitably making its way into production. So I don't think it's going to change necessarily how the teams are constructed, but how the review processes are maybe more focused on those edits that are made by AI and ensuring that that maybe gets another level of security if we're relying on code that's been written by it. But other than that, I think we're going to see hopefully a relatively seamless integration of the developers being able to integrate that into the products and the just coding languages that they use day to day.
So more like augmentation and kind of enhancing the kind of the security reviews and things like that, right? Like that's how you say it.
Always having the right tools is important. So security is all about having a huge security stack of different tools to be the most secure. Whereas with developers, we want to give them the most tools so that they can develop securely the fastest. We get our products out to our customers, but we can't ignore the fact that AI is new. AI produced code isn't always the best of quality as we've seen. So there needs to be that maybe other additional layer of check during the review process, I'd say.
100%. Any other takes on this, or we move to the next question?
I would say that it can also lead to more efficient and thorough reviews because it's a force multiplier. It allows you to get the context really fast and then action and be more strategic on what you're advising. So definitely a force multiplier, 100%.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think we also see it as something that helps with kind of explaining the issue. So even understanding like okay, what is the specific thing and kind of helping with the translation between security and development is something that actually current AI models really excel at.
And much needed documentation as well.
Yeah, one additional perspective that I might be able to say is in AppSec space, we have been focusing on the detection. How do we detect? How do we prioritize? But the remediation has been the challenge. That's the bottleneck, right? So you identify, you prioritize, but you still have like thousands of CVs, CWDs, all the issues that is out there. Who's going to fix it? So force multiplier aspect of AI is unique in so many ways that is going to help us with the remediation. All other attempts that is not using AI models has been very like false. They weren't like they weren't like delivering what the end result we were expecting from those promises. AI has the potential, a very good potential, to be force multiplier in clearing 99% of the issues that can be automatically remediated without creating too much pressure on the security or development teams.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. So, moving along, with the topic of this session, so there's a lot of discussion in the world of code security of what makes an effective security developer partnership. How would you distill kind of this large topic into like what are the most important must-haves for our audience to kind of to build into their processes and their teams? What would be your must-haves?
I can take the first pass again. Sorry, there's a certain delay with the camera. I guess that's what's throwing me off. One of the common things that we are trying to implement in large organizations is to use security as code and policy as code pattern, meaning security folks are involved with developing code that is helping detection or remediation to a certain degree. And with the AI and with all other stuff, we also even see like compliance as a code in the space that we are in. So all this automation, putting the security professionals in the spot to help with the remediation and also detection, is what we are seeing that's going to make the a big change in the space.
Yeah, cool. Jose, I saw you also had something to add.
Yeah, I think for for the developers and some examples of the things that can help, it's getting the feedback right and making sure that we're giving them an avenue to give us feedback on the things that we can improve on and go from there. I think that makes an insane amount of difference in partnership because you're hearing from their side, and then we're also giving them our insights into what threats we're trying to mitigate and what's happening, and truly creating a collaborative, clear communication path for them to articulate how we can move AppSec forward together. It's a team sport, so trying to build that bridge.
Yeah, team sport is 100%. Mike, anything from your side?
Well, I like the building the bridge analogy, especially with that feedback. It's a necessity to build that continuous feedback loop between whether it's a separate security and development team or just your DevSecOps dedicated and your standard developers. They need to have the feedback into how their workflow is going, what vulnerabilities are popping up, and then also, I mean, how we can stop them from even entering code in the first place, and what security tools we can use to stop those from coming in and help the developers and the security of the code that gets developed end up in a much better state by the time it gets pushed to production or something.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you touched something interesting, which is kind of, the workflows. So, as part of building the AppSec controls, a lot of this boils down to workflows and kind of setting the right workflows in place that actually reduce the burden from the developers. So is there something you can share about that? Like how are you optimizing this aspect? Like what works well, like from your experience, kind of that stuff.
Well,
Jose,
I
you
wish
have
I could say we,
sorry.
I was gonna say,
Sorry,
I
go
wish
ahead.
we could say we waved a magic wand, but you can't really reduce a lot of burden instantly. You can kind of start to stop the bleeding before you can, go back and start addressing your technical debt. So that's what I say we've definitely started doing is making sure we're implementing tools that aren't just spewing out 10,000 vulnerabilities and expecting our developers to go fix them. We're using things like AI to understand the remediation effects or automation capabilities of going and reducing that workflow. So it's a little bit of stopping the bleeding first, right? By making sure we have the right tools in place and the right process so that slow flow is able to be dealt with and then optimized as we work through again that technical debt that was, that's always going to happen in large organizations.
I'm gonna echo off that 100%. And piggybacking off what he just said, I would say another big call out is to also make sure that we're sharing the goal of what we're trying to do with our developers and with our security teams. And then when we share that goal, going back and then saying, okay, here's the goal, here are the easy paths to achieve that goal, and also giving them an easy way, meeting them where they're at in their IDE or in their communication applications with giving feedback. So creating workflows like a bot that they can report issues to, or if they have false positive, reporting that really easily so that we can get that feedback loop going and really open up that communication path and make it easier for them to work on an issue and see the accomplishments, right? Because no developer wants to work and not see the mountain get smaller, right? They don't want to see it get bigger. So
Yeah, 100%. Kyra, any last thoughts on like on kind of this subject?
I can only echo what they just said. It's perfect picturization or depiction of the issues that we're having.
Okay, very cool. So moving on kind of to the next question, kind of the next item is around trust. So obviously trust is an important part of the security developer relationship. Um, Obviously like false positive has a lot of impact on this, right? Like you're as a security team, if you're sending issues to developers and it's a false positive, it kind of breaks this whole notion of trust and this whole synergy that we're trying to build. Um, so there's obviously a major risk around that. What are you doing kind of in your organization to reduce the friction that is maybe caused because of this and kind of enables you to have like a really good programs with the developers?
Well, for us, a security champs program was very helpful in that. Embedding folks within these teams that we've trained and spoken to about what our goals are, what our priorities are, and then embedding them on the teams and then having them meet on a cadence to discuss things they're seeing in their teams, feedback they're getting from their teams, and how successful they've been with the things that we're addressing as a group has been really beneficial for our organization and has really also created a competitive aspect to it where now teams are competing up against each other to try to achieve these goals. So a little bit of gamification against all of the different teams within the organization to help it out. That's been a huge win for us.
It's also very important to understand that the type of data that we are dealing with will always going to have false positives, and that's why we start calling this precision guesswork, right? We try to precisely guess what needs to be prioritized or fixed. So ultimately, false positives, whether we have AI or not, someone has to validate it as a bot. AI can also be it's useful to validate that problem. But so many of the rules based engines that we have to rely on today in today's security space are going to give us a lot of noise. That the noise cancellation has to take place by someone who is very skilled in that space. Security champions are a good mechanism to do that, and we also have DevSecOps SMEs that are known to be expert on identifying common issues, whether we have Log4j in use in their package or in their application, regardless of the dependency being in there, it is also going to help us to reduce that noise by like 80%, 90%. It's not going to be easy to completely get out of that noisy environment, but the tools, especially like the tools like ASPM, are very valuable, very critical in achieving that type of noise reduction.
100%. So you mentioned feedback loops. Obviously, it's an important part to enable kind of the collaboration and to enable the trust. Are there any like other finer points that needs to be aligned of once you're kind of building these programs? Any other kind of recommendations that you want to share?
um, I'd definitely say, with a little bit on that last question too, with building trust in that feedback loop from the developers when new security initiatives come down, whether from leadership or from federal, state compliance levels. Some things need to be changed rapidly, whether it's a tool set, a new, oh hey, this used to be compliant but it's not. Building that kind of trust in that feedback loop of saying, hey, we're communicating what we want from maybe a security standpoint or DevSecOps standpoint, so that when there is false positives, when there's, hey, this is not fixable, or this isn't even reachable, for example, then we need to, as a security team, have that capacity of reporting and marking and going to someone who's going to be able to make that validation step, whether it's, I don't know, an AI chatbot that's going to make that validation for the developer, or again, dedicated security champions who are going to be able to make that call on the fly and allow that developer to kind of keep going, right? If they have to wait for an email back and forth over the course of a week just to do a push, our stuff's going to slow down and the tickets are going to pile up.
So I mean, it has to be fast. Like it can't slow developers down. It has to react, kind of be integrated in the workflows, and again, like be very, very fast, so that it has no impact on their velocity.
Absolutely.
Cool. So trying to tie everything we spoke of so far to ASPM, like I would throw this question out there, like what's the impact of having kind of application security centralized in an ASPM? What was the impact in your organization, and like kind of what you can share about that?
I mean, the
Was
last
there what?
front.
Yeah, Carol.
Yeah. So I have posted something about this a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn. The hidden layer of OSI layers is actually the source code itself. So if you look at all 7 layers of OSI layers, you have the application that's in runtime. You have the physical layer, network layer, etc., etc. The eighth layer has always been joked about, the political layer or human layer. Now we see that majority of the attacks and our security infrastructure coming from the software supply chain, which targets source code. The source code has to be somewhere, identified somewhere. And if you don't look at the source code as a vector or angle of entry to your infrastructure, you will going to lose the battle. The ASPM brings that transparency, brings that capability or situational awareness to the security folks. Similar to what SIM does. SIM tools that typically collects all the logs, all the activities coming from the firewalls, intrusion detection systems, verification firewalls, all other stuff that you have to collect all the activities or events in the log silos. ASPM, in my opinion, is doing something similar to that, collecting all the data from dependencies to source code, CWEs, CVEs, and other quality issues that brings that fully transparent environment to the governance functions in organizations like ours, so that we can remove that blind spot. Without ASPM or ASPM like tools, it's not achievable.
I would say for us it's a unified view, and it helps us with like efficient resource allocations to understand what each business is up against and what they have on their plate, and then helping them as best as we can based on the things we're seeing in their environments and what we're seeing from that unified view. So it's getting us to focus on one goal, and that's huge. Because if you can focus a bunch of people on one goal, that goal will should disappear. So we're trying, and it's been successful.
And And I'll just jump in on that because you said unified view. The term we use a lot is single pane of glass, right? So we're able to understand from all the different scanners, from all the different layers, from source code to the actual deployment of an application, understand in that single pane of glass where the vulnerabilities lie, where the resources need to be directed. But also, from the ASPM standpoint, it helps us streamline the developer's workflow because no longer do they have to log into 8 different UIs and 8 different tools to see what happens as their application progresses. Now they're just going to be able to work within their IDE, within their Git environment, or within whatever ticketing structure they have established from the ASPM. Everything's going to be able to be directed to them. And it really kind of helps, again, keep that continuous feedback loop and allow the developers to just keep working, keep knocking out vulnerabilities, and push good, secure code through.
Yeah, 100%. I think like if I try to kind of collect all these answers, so it sounds like SPM is on one side, it's an enabler like for the workflows and kind of the collaboration with the developers, helping with prioritization, kind of integrating with their existing workflows, but also being this kind of single pane of glass, it enables the security teams to kind of to be accountable for everything that happens and to get kind of this united picture of what's going on, regarding the application security programs and the software they're developing. So unfortunately, we're at the time. Kara, Jose, and Mike, thank you so much for the amazing insights. I have to end the session here, but I'm sure we could have spoken for many more hours on this topic. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for joining us today. Again, a special thanks to Kyra Jose and Mike, for the time. We've all learned a lot from the security programs that you're leading, so thank you again for sharing this with us. And I'm handing back over to Shauna, who will be telling you more about what speakers you'll hear from in the next session. Stay tuned.